It's no secret. It's plain to see. And I love you. And you love me. And it's no secret. And you know it's true. You love me. And I love you. The only time we seem to meet is in the middle of the night.
There you are.
Only then can I feel your heartbeat, 'cause something's not right. Together I see you and me, always and all time. But not everyone would agree, 'cause then it's a crime, it's no secret. It's plain to see.
Hey there.
Yes, I love you. And you love me.
Hello, hello, hello. And welcome to episode 6 of Survivor Strong, the podcast where we talk all things related to child sexual abuse, incest, and trauma. Thank you so much for joining me live on Fireside Chat, where you can be a part of the conversation as my virtual audience. I'm your host, Yvonne Sandomir. Everyone has an opportunity to ask me or our guest any questions by requesting to hop on stage or just sending a message in the chat box. So whatever's easiest for you. Today's guest is Leslie Ferguson. She's an accomplished editor, educator, writing coach, and now an award-winning author of her first book, When I Was Her Daughter. Her work has been published in numerous literary magazines and anthologies. She's a member of the San Diego Memoir Writers Association and the San Diego Writers and Editors Guild. Leslie is also a repeat performer at So Say We All's Vamp and Poets Under Greater San Diego area. Leslie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Oh, it's so good to talk to you.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to seeing you and talking with you ever since the book festival. So this is super fun. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. For those of you that don't know, Leslie and I actually met in person at the book festival in California, and we're definitely kindred spirits. We just like hit it off immediately, and I was like, I need you to come on my show and tell your story. So your book, When I Was Her Daughter, I have it here. I haven't been able to read it yet. As you know, my schedule's been absolutely crazy. I know yours has been too.
Yes.
But in your memoir, you talk about you're basically surviving your own mom's raging psychosis. And you had some pretty remarkable experiences from that. So, do you mind sharing a little bit more about your story for our listeners?
Yeah, not at all. So my book takes place beginning the time right around when my biological mom had her first major psychotic break, at least that I knew of, after being aware of life, and I was about 6 years old. So from there, my mom, my brother, and I were basically on the run from the government because my mom thought that the government was out to capture us, to torture us, rape us, murder us. So we were basically going from place to place, from my aunt's house to my grandparents' house to our apartment to the streets. And this was kind of a cycle that went on over a couple of years' time. And it was just about surviving and being at my mom's mercy with my little brother, who's 2 years younger than me.
Wow. So
And
this psychosis that your mom had, what is that what was causing her to have those
yeah,
delusions? Was she diagnosed with
yeah.
anything in particular?
So at the time, I was too young to know any of this. And I don't believe
Sure.
the word schizophrenia had ever been spoken to me when I was a kid. And she was a paranoid schizophrenic. So her main symptoms, among others, were severe hallucinations and delusions. She found everything symbolic. You know, she would even decide whether or not to cash her welfare checks or spend cash based on the serial numbers. And if the numbers were ominous and foretold of bad things happening, she wouldn't spend it. She would rip it up, or she would put it in a big stack of them with a rubber band around them, and we couldn't spend it. So we were hungry a lot because not only did we have very little money, what we did have, often she wouldn't spend. So, yeah, you know, I'm grateful for that young part of my life to have had my grandparents and my aunt who helped out as much as they could. But it's, you know, mental illness like that is a beast. You can't really get out from under it.
Sure. And especially when you're a kid, you have no idea what's going on, no understanding of
Yeah.
why your mom was doing that. And I think I cut you off. You wanted to tell us a little bit more, but I was just curious about that question.
Oh,
I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
no, that's fine. I just, you know, didn't know how much I should say about the book. If I should, you know,
No, as much
go
as
into the middle, give away the ending.
well, we don't want to give it away. We
That's
just
right.
want kind of like an idea.
Right. So I was placed in foster care, and my brother and I were in our first foster home we were in together. And that was for a few weeks. And then we had a court date. We went back to court. The judge gave us back to our mom. And this is after, you know, she's a danger to herself and others. And she has us leaving the apartment because she's paranoid that someone's going to come crashing through and take us and hurt us. And she keeps us out of school for weeks, months at a time. So in foster care, you know, like I said, I was with my brother. And then after that, when my brother and I went into foster care, I was 10 years old when we were taken away from my mom. And we were separated because of our gender difference. They don't place boys and girls together, even if they're siblings. And often homes, if they're a foster home, will have only girls or only boys because it's easier. You don't have to navigate the potential issues with gender, I guess. So we were separated, and that kind of began my life as an only child. And then years later, well, I guess that was when I was 10. When I was 11, almost 12, I met somebody who basically stepped in and said, "This isn't right. You know, I want to protect you from this home that you're in." And she kind of, you know, gave me a new lease on life, so to speak. No, I can't hear you.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
I don't know where you went.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Wow, wow, wow. So that's really an incredible story, and you know, dealing with schizophrenia, like you said, it's such a complex mental illness, and you know, so you're fortunate to have had people that wanted to protect you and bring you out of that, because not a lot of people
Right.
have that same thing, you know, that same
Right.
support. Um, And so is that why you decided to write your book? So to give other people hope or inspiration?
I mean, I'm sure that's the romantic idea, and that would be lovely if I could say that I started out from a young age thinking I'm going to tell my story and it'll help people.
Mm,
But I actually, I had pursued writing in college and English literature and was a high school English teacher. And it wasn't until like 2004 when I started acknowledging my trauma and processing everything that had happened. And so at the time, I was 30 years old and kind of opened this Pandora's box, if you will, of
mhm,
kind of chaos. And even though I knew what I had been through, I was so good at denying it and denying the pain. And I was the person who was like, oh, but so what? I'm fine. Everybody has a childhood, everybody goes through stuff. I'm no different. And
mhm,
I had a particular therapist who was helping me through my divorce at the time, who she pretty much had to shake me and say, Leslie, stop. You need to acknowledge. If you keep denying this, it's going to be more problematic for you. You are never going to be able to heal.
mm,
And it wasn't until like a year of working with her for, 2 or 3 times a month,
mhm.
sometimes more, that I finally started talking to her about my biological mom and some of what I experienced when I was little. And at that year mark, I finally cried in her office. And
Wow.
she commended me, and I was like, why? I'm crying. This isn't good. And she said, no, because you've had a breakthrough. Now
Yes.
you're on your way, and we can work through some of these things, and you're going to be able to heal. And I'm like, I was fine. I didn't need to heal.
Well, you know what,
So
a lot of people, they think that crying is a sign of weakness when it's actually a sign of strength.
I agree. I
Crying
agree.
is a sign of strength, that you're able to feel whatever it is that you're feeling.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people are strong enough to do
Yeah.
that.
Well, it's interesting because I think we have all of these different phases and stages of crying and what it means. Because I was sad. I was happy in that I was finally in a stable place when I think I was 11 or 12 when things started to turn around for me. But I was also a preteen, and everything around me was telling me I should be happy because everything's fine. I'm in a good situation now. I'm in school. I'm doing well. But I was really sad a lot, and I didn't know why. Because on the
Mhm.
outside, it's like, why am I sad? Look at all that I have now.
Right, right.
And so I would cry a lot of times secretly, and I would cry with um, the person who I was with as my mother. And she would say, I don't know how to help you. I'm so sorry. And I just thought I was impossible, that there was no reason for me to be crying, yet here I was.
Oh my
And I just
gosh.
kind of hated the world, and I was trying to love it. And I was trying to make it love
Were-
me.
You were grieving.
Yeah, I was
You
grieving.
were grieving a lost childhood. You
Yeah.
were grieving a relationship with your mother, a normal relationship with your mother. That's what those tears were. You're grieving the loss of what you deserved as a kid from your own mom. So crying is actually progress. It's a sign of progress, and it really can relieve a lot of anguish, a lot of pain. So just allow yourself to cry whenever you want to cry. That's what I
Oh, I
say.
do. I'm a pro at it now.
Oh, me too.
Um, amen. But when you talked about this is why I wrote the book, I think one of the biggest things I hope that comes out of the book is that people will see that kids are grieving and that kids need to be able to speak their truth. They need to be able to have an outlet that's healthy. They need to have support and not to be told to just be strong and don't cry and everything's okay now. Be grateful for what you have. I hope that my my book can help teachers and foster parents and anybody who works with children or has children in their lives just see, we need a softer, kinder path to help kids along because a lot of
Yeah.
times we treat them as if they're adults already and as if they should
Oh,
know everything.
oh,
And it's it would be great if even one kid had an easier, softer, kinder adult relationship with somebody who they trusted. That would be, if that comes out of this book, then I'm happy.
Yeah, no, that would be amazing. How was the experience of writing your story? Was it, daunting? Was it liberating for you? How was it? How was that experience for you?
Yes, and yes. Very daunting because when I first started, I was actually typing the words, this is my story, this is my memoir. And I intended that it would be my memoir and that it would be my story, but I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't know what it meant. I just was kind of letting it all out. And I would read some of my writing in my therapy sessions. And, talk about captive audience. I'm paying her to listen to my first drafts. And, but, she laughed and she cried. And it was very healing, just that process of having somebody give me permission to open up and share my story. And so that was very daunting because I was so new at it. I didn't know what it meant to actually dive in and be so vulnerable. All of my poetry, everything I had written in college was very superficial. Nothing was ever deep or meaningful. I didn't know how. And so now looking at having written in all that I went through, all of the challenges and the revisiting of past trauma that it's like going back to those places you never want to see yourself in and putting yourself there and reliving it so that you can tell your reader exactly how it happened.
Right.
So that is actually very liberating now that it's done, as I'm sure you know, right?
Oh,
You go through all of this. It's like, oh my gosh, it's out of me. I can breathe. I don't have to carry it. I can carry it in a book bag. I don't have to carry it in my heart anymore.
No, it's all out. It's all out. It's on paper. I know for me, I shared the same experience of how daunting it was to go through those childhood experiences. But at the end, I felt such a weight lifted. I can't even begin to tell you.
Yeah.
And people who are writing, I know one of our listeners, Judy. Hi, Judy. She's currently writing, and I know she can relate to this as well. Of how daunting it is having to go through those, that process of reliving everything.
Yeah. But you need
at
to. It's
the
like
end,
weeding
yes,
out the bad so that there's room for the good.
that's right. That's so right. And with that said, do you want to read a little bit from your book now?
Sure, I will.
Let's do it since we're talking it. Let's talk it. Let's do it.
All right.
Let's go.
I intended to spend a lot of time picking what I would read, but I kind of just opened to chapter 20. So,
Actually, before you do that, I'm
yeah.
going to invite Judy on the stage in case she
Okay.
wants to ask any questions.
Yeah.
She
Hi,
can
Judy.
hop on here too. Yay! Judy's here. Hi, Judy.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Yvonne.
Hi, Judy. Meet Leslie. Leslie, meet Judy.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for sharing your story.
My pleasure.
Do you have any questions for Leslie before she dives into her reading, or do you want to wait until after she's done her reading?
Right now, I'm just listening. It's very. Yep. I'll ask questions afterwards.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you know what, Judy, you may not even have any, and that's
Yeah.
fine too. Just
Okay.
having you here and part of the conversation is enough.
It gives me strength to hear other people's stories. I think it's really good. It's helpful.
Wonderful.
Oh, that is wonderful. Thank you.
Well, with that, Judy, I'm going to just mute your microphone.
Okay.
So, you're now muted. Okay, Leslie.
Okay. Well, and maybe I should ask you, should I read something from the first part of the book or in the middle somewhere?
Whatever you want. It's whatever speaks to you.
Well, okay. I'll start here. This is chapter 9, and this is in the summer of 1982. I'm 8 years old, and my mom has just gotten custody of my brother and I again, and she's taken us to this place where she's living with her boyfriend, and we haven't met him. And he has a 22-year-old son and a friend of his son who are all living in this like duplex area. And this is in Bell Gardens, California. Jerry, Mitch, and Tony helped Mom move some of our belongings out of storage. It was good to have our bunk beds again, despite the fact that I felt warm and safe sleeping next to Mom. With the bunks and Jerry's queen-size bed in the same room, there was barely space to walk between them. Jerry had been sleeping on the couch, but once we got our bunk beds, he slept in the big bed with Mom and wore only his underwear and snored like the motor of Grandpa's boat. Sometimes before Jerry came in, William and I crawled into bed with Mom, and we cuddled. Little else mattered in those moments when the three of us clung together, as tightly woven as a rug. We shut the world out, and nothing, not even a bad thought, wriggled its way in. William and I made friends with Sarah and Emily, who lived across the street, and their parents were never home. We watched Stripes, even though it was rated R and we knew we weren't supposed to watch it. We sang and danced to music in their living room, and when the Human League's Don't You Want Me came on, I jumped up and down and announced it was my favorite song. One afternoon, the sisters invited us to go swimming in their Doughboy, an above-ground pool, with no adults or lifeguard present. William shot down the stairs and through the door of Jerry's apartment, shouting, "Last one there's a rotten egg." I adjusted the straps of my bathing suit, which I'd almost outgrown, and trotted down the carpeted steps after him. But as I reached the bottom step, Mitch, Jerry's 22-year-old son, stepped in front of me. His dirty blonde hair, oily skin, and thick wire-rimmed glasses repulsed me. He always tried to make me laugh with stupid jokes. "How do you drown a blonde? What's black and white and red all over? Why did the chicken cross the road?" He paid too much attention to me in general. Mitch stood at the bottom of the stairs, his eyes strange and small behind his glasses. He spread his legs wide, gripped the banister with his right hand, and slapped his left hand against the wall, trapping me. I yelled for William to wait for me, but Mitch stepped into me and sighed, and his warm breath blasted my face. "Tell me what happened at the pool the other day," he grinned. "Nothing, we went swimming." I avoided eye contact. "That's not what Tony said." He wanted me to tell him about the naked man. I moved down one step and he leaned closer still, blocking me again with his body. "Okay, you can go," he said, "but first you have to give me a kiss." He tapped his scruffy cheek with his finger. His sausage breakfast breath lingered between us. He looked at my mouth. He opened his arms wide to hug me, as if he thought I'd willingly give myself to him. I shook my head no, but he persisted and asked for one quick peck, promising it would be our little secret. I resisted and shifted, attempting to escape. He told me not to be a baby, and that I could trust him because he was studying to be an optometrist. I hesitated. I didn't want to kiss him, but I also didn't see the harm in a quick peck on the cheek, if after that he would let me go. I held the banister with both hands and turned my body to the side. His eyes flashed. I closed my eyes and leaned toward him to kiss his rough, ugly face. But his cheek didn't feel like a cheek. I looked. He was kissing me back with an open, full mouth. I pulled back. He stared straight at me, smirking and tapping his fingers on the banister. I wiped the lingering wetness of his mouth on the back of my hand. I shoved him and rushed past him, feeling stupid, as I burst out of the house. I'll stop there, and I can maybe read a little more later if you want from a different section.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And how old was that man? Remind me. My
22.
fireside closed out for a second unexpectedly, so I missed a little bit. He was
That's
32.
Okay. 22.
22, and you were how old?
8.
Oh my God. Oh. Who was around during that?
You know, that's a good question. I try to think about things like that where I have memories that are isolated, um, almost like when I see them, there's like a fishbowl and I can only see myself in it. I can't
Mm-hmm.
imagine that anybody was there witnessing that. I feel like the room was like late afternoon, everything was kind of dim. And he was the only one in the room and stopping me from leaving the house. I don't know where my mom was. I don't know where. I'm assuming Jerry, her boyfriend, was at work. Um, but you know, the thought that we're alone with this guy, and I mean, that was a very real threat at that point. And nobody knew. Nobody thought anything of it. Even I, after that moment, didn't think anything of it except, oh, how gross. Like, that was scary because he's overpowering me in that moment and not letting me go where I want to go. Um, but where was the supervision? We were so unsupervised so much of the time.
Yeah, I can absolutely relate to that. But one thing that I hear, and I don't know if you intend to do this or not, if it's just um, how you cope, but I hear a little bit of minimizing in there. It could have been
Yeah,
a little bit worse. It could have been worse. What could have
yeah,
happened? But something did happen.
right. Well, this is the story of my life, minimizing everything, pushing it down, denying it so that I don't have to deal with it. Because if I say that it's wrong or bad, and I had done that with my mom some, and it doesn't feel good to go against the grain. And I think this is a lot of why I developed that need to be perfect and to, it's like I was always fighting and wanting things to be fair and be right, but at the same time, to say anything, to go against the grain was so uncomfortable. And I was in that situation a lot where I had to be the adult. And so as I became an adult, decision making was hard. And often it was difficult to think about any conflict.
Yeah, that person, did you ever see him again? Who was he
So
to you
he
again?
lived there with us.
Okay.
And, I'm not giving anything away to say, thankfully, nothing that I recall ever
Yeah.
happened beyond that. Um, and, so he was around while we lived there. And we lived there for, the better part of the summer. And I always wonder if there are things that I've blocked out because how I feel very like how was I so lucky to come through unscathed in some ways, even
Mhm.
though yes, I experienced some awful things, but I feel like it could have been much worse. And this is a lot of the book is me kind of in silence trying to reason with myself that things are okay, it's not what I think, it's not as bad as I think. And this is the character of who I was at that age, trying to make everything okay so that I could cope, because if everything wasn't okay, how the hell was I going to deal with it?
Right. I mean, if it wasn't okay, then life wasn't okay. Nothing
Right,
was okay. And that's just too much for a child to even
right,
comprehend having to make these adult decisions,
right.
and I don't want you to give anything away in the book, so we'll leave it there. But I can absolutely relate to that.
Yeah,
Um, and as far as blocking things out, it wouldn't surprise me. I
yeah,
wouldn't be at all surprised if that were the case.
yeah,
Um, but one thing that I will say about that is if you don't remember anything right now, don't rack your brain wondering, did something happen to me?
yeah.
You
Okay.
know, have some comfort in knowing that you don't remember anything.
Hmm.
And if anything comes up in the future, then it does. But right
Right,
now,
right.
that's all you know, and that's good enough, because that creates anxiety.
I'm
For
sure.
me, I know, I don't know if you've had a chance to read my story either. I know we've
Not
both been very
yet.
busy.
Hmm.
But, I can say that I endured from the age of 4 to 15, probably a dozen sexual molestations, rapes, incest, etc. And I didn't remember everything when I first started going to therapy. And then little by little, I started getting glimpses of a memory that I'd never had before. And then over time, and I think it's when you free your mind and your psyche of things that have been weighing you down, as you free that up, that space up, other things come up. Other things come up like, okay, so you've processed that. Now it's time to process this. So it's all part of the process. So if you don't, if you feel like you haven't talked about everything now, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up. It's therapy's, I say it every time, it's a marathon, right? Not a sprint.
Yes.
It really is, and so how did you find your healing? I mean, what was your inspiration to say, this is enough? I need to get help for myself because something's just not right.
Yeah. I just thought of another aspect of that question that I haven't really thought about, but I think a lot of healing came from just time and having supportive people and learning over much time that I could trust. And I think I was resilient because I had to be. And so I learned that really well. And I played sports and I was good at school. It was something I could just put my head down and be good at. And I wanted so much to just be good and to be normal.
Normal.
Yeah, right? Whatever that means. And I did go to therapy a little bit when I was younger. And then as I got older, I would seek out therapists, but it wasn't even really to deal with my childhood. It was mostly to deal with relationships or, why am I discontented or why am I sad? And I never really dug that deeply, I don't think, which is a surprise to me now at this point, looking back, because I know that I was encouraged to go. But maybe that's a thing too, that I hope that kids can all have somebody that they can talk to, a therapist, to kind of just let them know that their feelings are okay, that they're not wrong, they're not bad, and it's okay to start sharing. Because had I done more of that when I was younger, had I had that kind of guidance, I think I would have been able to heal starting a lot sooner. Now, who knows, maybe I would have fallen apart because of it. Maybe I had to keep this outer shell intact. But I don't want to knock the process that I've found since then. I think I still carry it in my body, and I'm always healing from that trauma because the body remembers.
Yes.
And I've had a lot of healing, but I'm still on my journey. And I do think that just as this trauma happened over time, over years and years and years, and then I lived with it for years and years and years without processing it, it's not going to go away overnight. So it takes some active, intentional work to undo all that's been done.
Oh, that's so beautifully said, and you're exactly right. It's you're not going to be able to address everything right away.
I lost you. Maybe until you come back, I'll say I think that for trauma survivors, it's one of the most important things that we can do for self-care is to give time to exercise, to meditate, to write, to just kind of be in that space of processing and giving yourself time to go through and just be with yourself, and see it and feel it and process it. You left, so I was filling the airspace.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My fireside keeps just like crashing.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Unexpectedly. So every time
I hope it's not me, because
no, it's totally my for whatever reason, my fireside. It's the first time I've ever had this issue. So I'm just glad it doesn't, ruin the whole show that you can.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I've got enough words, so I can fill the blank airtime.
Thank you. So, what advice do you have for other survivors, other trauma survivors?
I was saying a little bit to that right now, and this is maybe so cliche, right? But never give up. There's always going to be a change, a difference, a letting go of what's tragic, and the ability to breathe again, and you find your way through it. And it's important to process it. It's important to write and to breathe and to treat yourself well, to look at relationships that you're in, and seek out healthy relationships and seek out ways to be healthier in relationships. I'd say that, I've spent the better part of my life doing these things, and I think it's served me well where I am now. I am in a very loving relationship with my partner, and he's very supportive, and our relationship is very strong, and I'm grateful for that. It wasn't always the case for me, as someone who was trying so hard to be loved. I think I was insecure and demanding without realizing, because all I wanted was love. All I wanted was to be appreciated and cherished. And I think I had some ideas that a lot of girls learn when we grow up. We learn that, we're a princess and we are to wait for our knight in shining armor to come and rescue us. So be pretty for the boys, be quiet for the boys, be good for the boys.
Oh,
and
this
so
is
I was that
all day with these. Oh, all of the things that are put on the girls.
Yeah,
You gotta watch how you dress, what you
Yep.
say, where you go, how you dance. Oh,
and pressure for the boys too, right? To be this perfect vision of what somebody says you should be. It's like, you know what? Let's let our kids play and be creative and have fun, and let's not put so much on them.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Let kids be kids.
Yeah.
I think that kids, especially these days, just have a lot of pressure put on them, having to make so many decisions, and, that's why, like with my kids, I don't know if you have children of your own, but with my daughters, that's something that I'm, kind of dealing with now, is, watching them grow up. And
Oh, you're gone. Wow. I think you're going to talk about, watching them grow up and how hard it is, maybe how or how beautiful it is to see their beauty, their innocence, and see them becoming who they are. That's, I don't have kids, but I have cats, and so I get to watch them become who they are, little rascals. I was trying to predict what you were saying, and I was applying it to my cats.
You did a very good job. Thank you. Thank you so much. Technical difficulties.
That's right.
So that's what you get, right? But I think one thing that I was going to say is, I'm trying to, my girls are 20 and 17 now. So, but I raised them that they are not responsible for how other people perceive them.
I love it.
My daughter in particular, my younger daughter, she's the stylish one. She wants to wear what all the kids are wearing, and for whatever reason, what kids are wearing these days, they just decide they don't want that much material. So, I mean, it just is what it is.
Right. Must be too hot everywhere.
I'm just telling you, that's what it's like for girls shopping, is everything is so short, and but I don't shame her for that, because guess what? Legs are legs. Arms are arms. Your stomach is your stomach. I mean, it just and if anybody else has a problem with that, that's their problem.
Yeah. You know, my ideas now about some of these things have evolved, but I was a high school teacher for many years, and we had dress codes, and I can recall, dress coding girls for having, bra straps showing, clothes very small, and but also dress coding boys for wearing pictures of naked women on their shirts or guns. And I think it's such a difficult thing because we think of policing it to keep our children safe, but it's these messages that we're teaching them that the bodies are dangerous,
Right. And that's why we have to change the mindset. We have to stop teaching our boys that girls are sexual objects, period.
Right.
Think about this. I can't tell you how many times I've seen, people with toddlers, and I admit I've been guilty of this too with my daughters when they were young, so I'm not shaming anybody. It's just kind of a realization that I have now. But you think about toddlers. You have a boy and a girl toddler. They're at an event. Oh, go hug your boyfriend, and you encourage them to be affectionate and to love each other. Oh, that's your boyfriend. That's your boyfriend. Growing up, we tell our kids, oh, that's your girlfriend. That's your boyfriend. If it's an older person that they tend to like, and we say that our children are flirting with these, but they're not flirting. They don't know how to flirt. They're being themselves and they're being cute. So if they smile at an older woman, you don't say, oh, you're flirting with that older woman. No, it's the whole mindset that we have to change, in that boys need to understand that girls are not only here to procreate, that they need to love, respect, and treasure girls and women for who we are and not because of our bodies. So much emphasis is put on that, especially boys growing up. I watched this really interesting documentary, and I think I mentioned it several episodes ago, but it's called Rewind. And I don't know if you've ever heard of it before. But this documentary, my mind just went blank. It's like, no, you're not talking about that.
Oh, you're talking about Rewind and something about teaching boys that girls
yes, thank
are
you
not.
so much. Thank you so much.
I was paying attention.
And actually, Rewind is a different documentary. It's not even the one that I'm thinking about now, but that not for nothing. But here, I remember what it was. There was a case a long time ago. There was a boy who was kidnapped. He was kidnapped from his home, and he spent like 7 years with his perpetrator, with his kidnapper, and was eventually found and healthy. But, when he came home and when people asked him if he was ever sexually abused by this person, he obviously denied it and whatever. But what was so striking to me is I was watching, during these documentaries, they have interviews from, at the time, interviews, what police said, and this kid at this time when he came out, I think he was like 14. I could be wrong, but he was a kid anyway. And there's this, I think it was a police officer who was involved, who was like on camera with the news saying, yeah, he's been through a lot, but I told him he's going to get a lot of girls because of what he went through. So, just focus on the girls. And when I heard that, I wanted to scream, because too many people, when we're talking about men and boys in general, don't understand how that affects the victim, whether it's a boy or a girl. But to shift his focus immediately to girls, oh, go get your troubles out on girls, it's just sending the wrong message. And I think we have to stop doing that. We have to stop telling our young boys that it's manly to lose their virginity, when they're younger, to, older women. I mean, Well, I
in
mean, in
general that,
college, if you're in high school and you sleep with a college girl, you're like the man,
yeah,
right? But in
yeah,
reality, you're a kid who's
right,
being abused,
right.
but you just don't realize it.
Well, I think, you said something interesting, and it's about shifting the narrative because, in general, and you and I are still of the generation where it is about, your purpose in life is to grow up and get married and have babies. And
Yes.
so there is this like, oh, go get the girls, go get the boys. Um,
Yep.
and I hope that we are shifting away from that narrative because it's so much pressure. And I'm sorry, what if there's a girl who doesn't want the boys? What if there's a boy who doesn't want the girls? And then what does that
Right.
do to their feelings of, of,
Right.
of identity and self esteem? It's like everyone's telling me that this is normal and right and what I'm supposed to want, but I don't want it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's crushing. That's soul crushing right there.
Yeah.
And this idea that, why can't it be about now you can live your life the way you want? Now you are
Right.
in the world, you can make yourself happy. You can do things that matter for yourself. You can have an existence that is free of danger, as much as you can, hopefully, that you can heal, you can move forward. What about these kinds of things that are so important to just people becoming people in the world who feel like
Right.
they matter, who have something to offer to others, not to members of the opposite sex or even in a
Right.
relationship unless that's what they want,
Right.
you
So,
know?
and and one part about this documentary that I was watching, um, this same cop actually, this after it all came out that he had been abused, said, nobody wants to talk to him about that. He doesn't want to talk about
Wow.
what happened to him. That's too embarrassing for him. And that's the mindset for boys, is that they're too
Yeah.
embarrassed to talk about it. But why? Because you have people like this police officer who is perpetuating
Right.
that
Yeah.
distorted thought
Right. They
process.
will see him in a position of authority and power, and what he says must be right because he's a cop after all.
That's
That a
right.
little kid may be thinking that what this man says is what's important.
That's right.
And it's so, when really all that does is emphasize how uncomfortable it is for that particular police officer, that he doesn't want to talk about it.
Absolutely. It
And
says more
how
about him
often
than
we
the
tell,
victim.
yes, how often we tell people what they should want and say and do and think. And it's based on our own shortcomings and our own upbringing, perhaps, or maybe what we've learned or our own discomfort. So, I hope you come back. Our conversation's getting good. Um, so yeah, I think, with these books about trauma and survivors, it's important to keep this kind of a dialogue going, that we are ushering in a new era of
Yes.
understanding that um, the victim is whole. The victim
Yes.
needs to control the narrative, and it is not anyone else's place to stifle or to direct or guide in a way that shuts this person down.
Right. And it's not for that person to decide that he doesn't want to talk about it.
Right,
You know?
And there's
right,
been such a bad stigma attached to survivors of abuse
yes,
where they don't want to speak out,
right,
or even like what I'm dealing with members of my own family that I never ever thought would treat me the way that they're treating me right now, or the words or the things that they're saying that are so hurtful makes me feel like I'm back
hmm.
Hmm.
um, right there as a child being abused. and
Wow,
and then that I know this is going to sound strange, but almost feeling like those same thoughts that were like instilled on you, that you deserve it,
right,
you
right,
know. So I'm really happy that more and more people are sharing their stories and getting them out there, because they do need to be addressed.
Yeah.
And we don't have to feel like we're the, you know, the scum of the earth. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And
Because we're
that
not. We're so beautiful.
and that is so important, to
Yeah.
change these attitudes and these feelings that something's wrong with us because
The,
I was mistreated. And
and what
that
they're
is
telling us, just like you were talking about the police officer and how
right.
he was talking really for that boy that had been abused. It's like everybody else is doing the talking for us.
Right. Right.
Yes.
Well, this is why stories save lives, because
Absolutely.
we're looking for connection. And when we share our stories, we're able to tell others that they're not alone. And through that, we feel less alone as well.
Right.
And that's what life is about. It's about connecting and helping others and living as full and as beautiful of a life as possible, given all the obstacles that are thrown at you.
Right.
So I'm always love to hear people say, thank you for sharing your story. And I want to hear their stories as well, because this is the fiber of what makes us stronger and what makes us able to understand and communicate and have fuller, richer lives.
I
Yes.
love that. I love that. And actually, Leslie, speaking of stories and how important they are, do you want to continue reading for a little bit for us?
Sure, I would love to. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome.
There's one chapter in here that I always read, and I'm trying not to read it because I want to read something different for a change. All right. Oh, okay. This one's a couple of pages. Maybe it's 3.5 pages. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's
You have
fine.
time? Okay. This is chapter 5, 1981. I'm 8 years old. One night, I dreamed of the giant hair monster from the Bugs Bunny cartoons, shaking its thick pelt that hid its eyes, nose, mouth, and skin. It rattled me forcefully, and right before it ate me, I woke up. The lights were on, and William was kneeling next to my bed. My pink Barbie doll case stood upright, opened in a V in the middle of the room. Barbie and Skipper and their clothes and shoes and plastic purses were spilled out in a heap. William pointed to a sheet of lined notebook paper that sat on top of the case. He picked it up carefully, as if it were made of brittle glass, and held it toward me. I took it from him and got up to my knees. My dearest Leslie and William, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Trust me, please. This is the best way. I can't keep going. I can't protect you. I'm sorry to leave you, my sweet darlings. Mommy loves you very much. You have each other. Always take care of each other. You are family. I'm going to skip part of that, and the letter goes on for a little bit and says, Mommy loves you very much. I'm sorry. Goodbye. I love you. XOXOXOXO. Hugs and kisses forever and ever, Mommy. William's tears made roads down his pink cheeks. He sniffled and wiped his face on his arm. I think it means she's dead. My skin trembled, and my pulse bounced in my throat. I didn't know how to slow it. I turned the paper over as if I might find answers there. Let's make sure she's okay. William swallowed, and his mouth clicked like maybe he needed a drink of water. Checking on Mom meant traveling silently down the dark hall to avoid waking Grandma and Grandpa. Waking them meant showing them the truth about Mom and risking being put out on the streets. If we could only make sure she was safe, we could avoid troubling anybody else. I grabbed William's hand as I stood. No, he had changed his mind. I don't want to. She's dead. William licked away tears that fell onto his lips. I'll hold your hand. Come on. I can't go by myself. I was too scared to do anything alone. William thought we should wake Grandma and Grandpa, but I didn't want to upset them, didn't want to make Grandpa mad. William suggested that Mom would have taken the letter back if she were still alive. His intelligence amazed me sometimes. I couldn't go back to bed without knowing the truth. Besides, if she were in the middle of a suicide, maybe I could stop her. I returned the letter, which now felt cold and wet in my hand, to the doll case and squeezed William's hand. We tiptoed into the dark dungeon of a hallway. My eyes failed to adjust. Was the floor there as it always had been? Or if we stepped forward, might we fall into a bottomless pit? My foot was so pale it seemed to glow against the dark carpet. "What is that?" William whispered, pointing to a blackish, silvery blob of a thing on the floor, right against that baseboard. Dread flushed through me, my teeth chattering over the metal taste that flooded my mouth. I swallowed a cry. "Is that her head?" I whispered. "Oh my God." We moved so slowly we might have been going backward, shrinking more and more as we moved, never to arrive at our destination. I don't know why I kept myself from screaming out, why I thought I should stay quiet at a time like this. If Mom had killed herself, she wouldn't have left her head in the hallway. Also, nothing would be right ever again. What worse harm would a scream do? My eyes played tricks on me like other times when I saw shapes and shadows that made me think someone was sitting there waiting to get me. And when my eyes focused, I saw how silly I was. William pulled on my hand with both of his. Hotness ran rings around my eyes and ears, and a thin, cold sweat formed between my skin and polyester nightgown. We approached the blob, and I bent over slightly to get a better view. The blob had uneven edges, like maybe it was the back of Mom's head and she was face down on the carpet, and her hair was all messy, making her head appear misshapen instead of rounded. As we got closer, I stuck my foot out and tapped the blob with my big toe. It was soft and crinkly, and it gave way, floating upward. "It's a plastic bag," I whispered. I imagined her attempting to suffocate herself, gasping for the vanishing air as she sucked the bag into her mouth. Next to the bag was the sash to her brown dress. How clearly I could see now. Had she planned to hang or strangle herself with the sash of her dress? She must have tried. I was relieved we hadn't found Mom dead in the hallway. But was she dead in the middle bedroom only a few steps from where we stood? I pulled William gently into Mom's room. I was terrified, but I had to finish this thing I'd started. I couldn't turn back now and leave these knocking questions unanswered. The stale air smelled faintly of freshly ironed sheets, vacuumed carpet, and Mom's smoky, soap-scented skin. When I pushed on the door, it became shiny from a spray of moonlight coursing in over the tops of the cafe curtains along the far wall. William pressed his lips into my shoulder. His wet breath left a cool spot each time he inhaled. "Mom," I whispered. No answer. "Mom," I said again. I wanted her to hear me and be alive. I didn't want my grandparents to find the letter or the plastic bag or sash. I could see what seemed to be a body in the bed, but it might have been a heap of crumpled blankets and sheets or pillows put there in such a way to make it resemble a body. "Mom?" Leaning against the bed, I pushed the lump. It moved. "Mom?" William said. A groan rose from the pile, and Mom's dark face emerged from under the blankets. "What?" she whispered. "Why are you up? Go back to bed." How could she act as though everything was normal, as though she hadn't left a goodbye letter for us to find or a trail of weapons in the hallway? "We thought you were dead." William climbed onto the bed. "We read the letter." I tried to sound angry, but my voice quivered. She deserved my hardness, my hatred for her cruel trick. But I was small and soft in my need for her love. So I climbed into bed next to her and laid my arm over her ribcage like I was the mom and she the baby I needed to protect.
Wow. Wow. Beautifully written.
Thank you.
I can't even imagine how that must have felt for two young children to think that your mom is dead.
So scary.
Yeah.
How old were you and your brother?
So I was 8, I think. Let me see if I remember exactly the month. So this was during the time where the three of us went to live with my grandparents because we didn't have any place to go. And I think my grandparents thought, they could kind of keep us safe if we were there. Where else would we go? And I was 8, and I remember that because shortly after that, she leaves. And then my brother and I are alone with my grandparents living there. And I'm in the 3rd grade. So that I remember.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Had she ever tried to do suicide before to give you and your brother that thought, that impression, to be so worried?
She talked about it a lot. And there is another scene in the book where we catch her in progress, and times where she's talking about how we can kill her, or how she wants to kill us so that things will be better, so that we
I'm
won't be
so
tortured.
sorry.
Because if she kills us, she saves us from worse fate and being tortured. So yeah, there's several scenes in the book that I have, had to recall in detail for the book.
Yeah.
I laugh about it. This is
No,
the
you have to,
discomfort
right?
of it. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the book, the early days, with her in the book, are about trying to navigate her illness and be the adult and tell her, no, Mom, you're not going to do that. No, you're not going to do that. No, you're not going to do that. When she basically is trying to figure out a way to escape the government, to keep us safe, even if that means she has to kill us in order to do it.
Wow. And on that note,
It's 5:00.
Leslie, so where can people follow you on social media if they want to connect with you, if they want to reach out to you? Where can they find you?
I am pretty active on Instagram and Facebook. I am at More Leslie F. That's MORELESLIEF on Instagram. And Facebook, I'm leslie.ferguson.42. Also have a website, lesliefergusonauthor.com, and gives information about where you can buy my books and my books. Look at me, predicting the future. There's going to be another book.
You're manifesting. That's what I call,
That's right.
That's what I call manifesting. Was another question I was going to ask you about
Sure.
other books, but we're a little bit over
Okay.
time right now. So, but hey, that just means I have to have you back and ask you more questions.
That's
because
right.
I didn't get to them all.
That's right. I would love it.
Yeah. So Leslie, well, first of all, Judy, I want to thank you for always tuning in and being here and supporting the show. I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Yvonne.
Of course. And of course, Leslie, my kindred spirit, author of When I Was Her Daughter. Make sure that you go out and you get this remarkable memoir. I haven't read it yet, but I know that it's going to be amazing. Just based on what I heard a few seconds ago, what you've already read for us. So with that, thank you so much, Leslie, for being with us. I really appreciate you. We will be back here next week, Wednesday, June 1st at 7 p.m. right here live on Fireside again. You've been listening to Survivor Strong, and just a reminder, you've got this. We are all in this together. Okay? Until next time, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.